Kia ora everyone, thank you for the warm welcome there, Sophie. First of all, it's great to see some familiar faces in the room and a lot of new faces as well. So as Sophie said, a little bit about me and what I do. So I am a researcher at AUT and I work in the marketing department, but I specialise in the research that I do actually looks at social problems. So, for example, I do a bit of research around homelessness, a lot of research around housing, service pipelines, where they're broken, how broken they actually are at the moment. We'll get into that. I also do some research around why we as a community, we have the best intentions to start new sustainable practices, but we just always drop off the wagon and we can't sustain our motivation and commitment. And also things like why literacy in childhood or illiteracy actually impacts how people respond in markets, their level of resilience or their level of vulnerability. So when people hear about the type of research I do, the next question I get asked is, why the hell are you in a marketing department? Can someone please explain that disconnect? And to be honest, fair question, and I do get it quite a lot. But I think people assume that these things aren't connected, but they're very much interlinked, okay? And that's kind of where my research sits, is that intersection between markets and social problems. So I'm very interested in how social problems kind of connect to the decisions we make as marketers and, the decisions we make in business and vice versa. So that's kind of what I'll be talking a little bit about today. So when Sophie approached me about doing this, event, I thought I'd talk a little bit about that disconnect. And so I've called this lecture, If Marketing Works, which we know it does, why have we got so many problems happening? Just a kind of spot check, how many people here work in marketing? Okay, all right, so we've got a couple. All right, that's cool. And hands up for those of you who don't? Okay, all right, okay, cool. So let's just do a little bit of a deep dive into the dumpster fire that we have as a world at the moment, okay? So let's start with something that's actually hitting us all pretty hard at the moment, and it's the cost of living crisis. So there was a survey done a couple of years ago that actually looked at how countries rank in terms of cost of living. Guess where New Zealand was? Okay, number 19, not so bad, but out of 197 countries, okay? So that's pretty bad, okay? And I think that's something we can all agree on. We're all feeling the pinch one way or another, and that's because of insurances, our gas prices, food prices, insurances, mortgages, you name it. So the cost of living crisis is actually having a direct impact on our level of homelessness at the moment. So unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know that New Zealand has an absolute homelessness crisis at the moment. So out of all OECD countries, we have one of the highest rates of homelessness. And a bit of a fun fact, we're probably one of the only countries to have rising gender equality in homelessness as well, which means we've got just as many women out there who are facing homelessness, and with that brings a whole plethora of different problems as well. So I guess I want to talk a little bit about our climate as well. And I don't mean to do a kind of a little fact dump, but it's good to know where we're at, okay, I suppose as a society. But we've noticed that the New Zealand summers are changing a little bit, yeah? Now we're seeing in the headlines a lot of once-in-a-century storms, flash floods, all of these things, and that's because the Earth's climate is starting to warm up, okay? And New Zealand's adaptation response to that is a little bit off the mark, okay? So we're seeing a lot more of these natural disasters happen again and again and again in the Herald. And I suppose it wouldn't be a marketing lecture if we didn't talk a little bit about AI. Actually, when I was thinking about a topic to talk about, I was like, yeah, I could do AI. I live, breathe AI as well. I teach it. I'm a digital marketer by trade as well. So I love AI, okay? It's embedded in what I do. But the thing is, part of being AI literate is also understanding the wider implications that our use of these tools have. So obviously, we've all adopted these tools, but it has massive implications for the environment. For example, these large language models, training them, they can actually pump out as much carbon dioxide as 300 commercial flights alone. So that's quite a lot. And it's projected by next year, the demand for the water in order to cool these machines is about 7 trillion litres of water. Okay, so if we think about that kind of in context with the environmental issues that we're facing, we can kind of see that there's a connection there, and the world is heading in kind of this direction, but we're all kind of burying our heads in the sand about it one way or another. Who's read the Epstein files? Who's been brave enough? Yeah, me. Oh, it's grim. Oh, it's grim. Yeah, so, I don't want to go into too much detail here, but obviously we've got some of our, biggest powerful leaders, our decision makers, people in authority committing the most heinous crimes. And these people still have not been prosecuted yet. And we might think, oh, this is just an American issue, but hey, mixed skimming, okay? That wasn't too long ago either. So it's very much happening on our doorstep as well. Wars, modern slavery, okay, you name it. The world is a little bit of a dumpster fire, okay? And we all know that in one way or another. But where are we as consumers? Where is our attention, okay? If I open my TikTok, if I open my Instagram, these are the things that I'm seeing, okay? I'm seeing TikTok dances, I'm seeing Sheen hauls, and Get Ready With Me. And all of these are products that, are pushed towards me that I probably don't need, okay? But they're micro forms of engagement that are really engaging and really good at capturing and sustaining my attention. So what we see is we're kind of in this attention paradox, okay? So we've got all these massive issues happening, and we know about them, but our attention is over here, okay? And we're looking at our TikToks and things like that. So we call this an attention paradox because marketers have these really, really strong tools. They're really great at capturing and sustaining our attention, but they're driving it in the wrong direction, okay? And us as marketers, the practitioners in the room, know that we have these powerful tools at our disposal, okay? But again, we're driving that attention one way, when it probably needs to go the other as well. So it's not about blaming ourselves as consumers, because we're all a little bit guilty, but it is kind of about highlighting where this tension lies. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. So if we strip it all back, what is marketing? Any guesses? Anyone brave enough to talk back to me? No? Okay, cool. So I think when we learn about marketing, we think it's those kind of hard technical skills that we learn in university and in the classroom, okay? Marketing is branding, okay? Marketing is communication. Marketing is digital marketing, okay? It's storytelling. And yes, it is all of those things, but if we strip it right back, okay, marketing is a discipline that has 3 core functions in terms of how it actually changes behavioral infrastructure, which is kind of what I want to talk about today. So the first one is marketers are the shapers of cultural norms. So for those of you who might still be in university or you might not have done a consumer psych class, norms are the things, the invisible rules that we feel obliged to follow, okay? If we don't follow these rules, we get the side eye or, we get shunned in the public. And so we feel this obligation to, oblige and follow these rules. So consumers are the ones that kind of respond to these norms, whereas marketers are the ones that actually shape it. Okay, so we're using our technical skills, our branding, our communication to really drive what feels normal and what feels acceptable. Anyone else really hot in here? Oh my gosh, I thought it was just me. I was like, okay, great, okay, not just me. The other thing that we are is we are the designers of choice environments. Okay, so choices actually don't happen in a vacuum, okay? Marketers are the ones in the background that are facilitating and they're designing that environment. Say, for example, supermarkets, okay? You're walking down the aisle of baked beans, okay? But in the background, those marketers are paying top dollar for putting their brand and their product at shelf level, okay, at your eye level. Why is that? Because we're facilitating a choice. So actually there's been a lot of research that looks at consumer decision making. And I think what's really interesting about that is that recent research shows that 90% of consumer decision making, or decision making in general, is actually driven by the subconscious mind. Okay? So what that tells us is that consumer choice is less about autonomy, it's less about willpower, and it's more about what feels right or what feels easy in a particular context. Okay? And that's what marketers are doing in the background. They're shaping that choice environment to facilitate you making the choice that kind of benefits them, to put it bluntly. And we are, as a discipline, we are the architects of attention. Okay? Some of you in this room actually work at an agency with that in your name, so that's probably not news to you, but we are the architects of attention. So as we know, attention is scarce and everyone is competing for it. Okay? And that's why we're in this attention economy paradox, because we are using these skills to drive attention this way, okay, when what we're actually probably doing is exacerbating some of the issues that we see on this side as well. Okay. Oh, it's hot. Okay, so where are we at? Let's just do a little bit of a recap. We've talked about, some of the social issues and the things that are happening in the world. We've kind of broken down how marketers, influence behavior, okay? Taking those technical skills that we have, but fundamentally, this is what we're doing, okay? So if we think about it holistically, where attention is going, and the functions of marketing, then yeah, perhaps it's a fair statement to say marketing is a source of evil, and we do get that a lot. Because after all you need to do is type in false advertising into the Commerce Commission website, okay, to see that the art of, bad marketing is well and alive today. Okay, I did it just yesterday and I got about 600 hits just from looking at false advertising, okay? So I think what that also tells us is that people are learning these skills, okay, but they might not be applying it in a way that aligns with values. Okay, so if marketing is so good, why do problems still exist? Okay, and this has been a problem or a tension that's been bothering academics for decades, okay? And from this tension, what we have seen is this kind of emergence of a new kind of sub-discipline. So why we need another discipline, I'm not sure, but we do have one. So basically what social marketing is all about is about using those principles, those technical skills that we have, branding, storytelling, shaping cultural norms, all of that stuff, but to actually drive behaviors for the benefit of social good, okay? So this emerged in the 1970s, and a good way to kind of think of the distinction is while traditional marketing is normally about selling goods and services for the financial bottom line, social marketing is actually about selling behaviors, okay? So we will shape cultural norms, okay? We will design choice environments and all of that stuff and drive attention to actually get consumers to either accept, reject, modify, or adapt their behaviors. Okay, so when we're talking about our target markets, we're not just talking about you and me as consumers, we're talking, bigger scale as well. We're talking, communities, we're talking nations, we're talking governments, depending on what the issue is. So I wanted to kind of touch on how this looks in practice. So back in my day, and I'm going to be showing my age a little bit here, but back in my day, smoking was pretty cool. Okay, smoking was really sociable, and it was accepted, I see Sophie going, is it not now? But, as this became more socially acceptable, it started to become a bit of a health crisis as well. So stats show that there was around 5,000 people dying annually from smoking. So if we look at that in terms of averages, that's around 12 to 13 people a day, okay? Pretty bad, I suppose. So, pre-social marketing efforts really, focused on, okay, if consumers have the right information and they know that this is bad for their health, they're going to stop. They're going to stop buying it, right? But that's not how consumers work, okay? Again, 90% of that decision making is driven by the subconscious. We do things, that we're not entirely conscious about. It's an addiction after all as well. So social marketing came on the scene and it took a three-pronged approach, okay? So what it first did is it started changing these cultural norms. Suddenly we started seeing more campaigns that said, you know, maybe it's not so cool smoking in public places. Maybe it's not so cool smoking in the car with your children, okay? And all of a sudden, those norms started to slowly change. Research and social marketing started to change these choice environments as well. So more research came out that actually, started to inform taxation on tobacco and price hikes as well. So back in the good old day, okay, and yes, I was a smoker once upon a time, don't judge. A 30 gram was about $30, okay? Then it became $60. And I don't know what the price is now, but it's certainly unattainable, okay? Again, here are marketers facilitating and changing that choice environment, okay? It's out of our reach now. And of course, what do? We change where the attention is going as well. So back in the good old day, when I went up to go buy cigarettes, you would have all the brands up there on the shelf, okay? You had people who were loyal Dunhill Blue people, okay? B&H, the gold packet. People were brand loyal to these, specific cigarette types, okay? Now what do we see? No branding, okay? Instead, we've just got these huge, ugly, graphic images of what smoking can do and big, labels about how harmful it is, okay? Redirecting that attention elsewhere. So what's the result? We've seen a drastic decrease in smoking over the last decade or so. Okay, so around, I think it was about 27 or 28, maybe even higher, percent of adults over the age of 15, so not always adults, were smokers. But now we've seen that gradually reduce to about 8.4%. Okay, so that's through those efforts and the three-pronged approach and how powerful marketing is at changing behavior. Okay, even if it is a bit of a long game. And I want to talk about something a little bit more close to my heart. Okay, so I didn't mention before, but I think it was 2023 census data showed that we have about 112,000 people who are homeless, okay? I'd say that's probably a gross underestimation about how many people are actually homeless right now. But did you know that 50% of that population is in Auckland alone, okay? I was reading some stats yesterday and I think it was about 900 in the CBD rough sleeping, okay? So that's a whole lot of people out there on the streets that are sleeping rough. Okay, so the thing about homelessness is that research and policy are actively at odds about this all the time. So let's have a look at some of the cultural norms and the choice environments that these people have. So when we think about cultural norms, it's generally assumed that homelessness is a moral failing of the individual, okay? We had Mr. Mitchell, Amber will know all about this. We were on Radio New Zealand last night just talking about this. Good old Mr. Mitchell says that, homelessness is actually a choice. Well, actually, if we look at the research, it shows that this is certainly not a choice, okay? Out of the whole population, no segment has more social service interactions than the homeless, okay? If we're talking averages, it's about 500 per person. What that tells us is that we've got a broken system, okay? Here are people who are trying to make a choice to get out of homelessness, to find a pathway out of homelessness, but they're just not getting it, okay? So is it a failing of the individual or is it actually a failing of the system that they're put into? When we think about choice environments again, so we often think that choice is something that's universally accessible. Everyone can make their choices. And again, we've got Mr. Mitchell saying, hey, no, it's a choice for these guys to be on the street. But actually, again, if we look at the research and we look at the data and what it shows, actually it shows that that choice architecture is really broken, okay? People are not getting those pathways out of homelessness, okay? So obviously you can tell it's something I'm a little bit, passionate about because we're not quite there yet as we are with with smoking, okay? We're still in that friction with policy to try and change these choice environments and to change the cultural norms around homelessness. So we're doing a bit of research at the moment. I'm currently out on the streets twice a week, talking to our street whānau. And we're going to be, presenting or publishing a report, hopefully ahead of elections, to kind of redirect where the attention is going. Okay, so at the moment, we've got this new policy that's come out. Who's heard all about this Move On policy? Yeah, all right. For those of you who may not have, I'm going to briefly go into it. I'll keep it brief. So now, we're criminalising homelessness, okay? That's more or less what we're doing. So police are giving orders that they can now move on people who are homeless to where, fuck knows, I don't know. Okay, but if they don't, they can face up to a $2,000 fine. How a homeless person is going to pay that, I don't know either. Okay, or they can face up to 3 months imprisonment. Okay, someone make it make sense, because us who are doing the research are saying this certainly makes no fucking sense. Okay, anyway, so we're trying to publish this research, and it'll be out soon, to kind of redirect that attention back upstream, going, actually the fault's not on the individual. Let's look at the service, the pipeline here, and where people are falling through the cracks. Okay, so again, social marketing, while it was being really effective with smoking, we're still in that process with things like homelessness. Okay, all right, I feel like I've been talking at you guys for a little bit, and I promise to wrap up soon, but I just kind of want to touch on what effectiveness really means, okay? And it really depends on what side of the fence of marketing you're working on, okay? If you're in commercial, your effectiveness looks a little bit different for those of us that are working in social marketing. But I guess the question is, how can we bring these a little bit closer together? So if you're working in a commercial setting and you're doing marketing, then your effectiveness is measured by how much you bring to the bottom line, okay? Your financial gain. So the KPIs and the metrics that you'll be paying attention to, or should be really important to you, are things like your level of reach, okay? Your engagement and how you're driving conversions, okay? What works, okay? And that kind of defines your effectiveness as a practitioner, okay? But then us on, those of us that are on the other side of the fence, yeah, that stuff still matters, but actually we're looking at it a little bit differently, okay? So we're using, reach, engagement, conversions, all of that stuff, but more to measure societal gain, okay? So how is our reach, engagement, and conversions actually driving policy adoption, okay? How's it driving the change of behavior for the segment that we're focusing on? Okay, are we seeing any cultural and social shifts as well? So, like I said before, how, you've got to rip down the page there. How do we start bringing these two things closer together? Because they shouldn't be different camps, we should, as a society, be working kind of towards the same direction. But also, how do we do that without making it feel, without it feeling performative and a little bit inauthentic? Yeah, okay, so commercial organizations exist for financial gain, and there's nothing inherently wrong with that, okay? That's a great thing, okay? But it becomes a little bit murky when they try to engage with, social impact, but it feels really, really performative. So for example, corporate social responsibility has become a really big buzzword, because we know, and research shows, that it actually drives to the bottom line, okay? Consumers are actually 4 to 6% more likely to buy from your brand if they know you're aligned with a good value, okay? And actually, interestingly enough, if it's a green value and you're for the environment, they're 66% more likely to buy from your brand, okay? So now we have a lot of companies jumping on this to make sure that they're signaling a value. But the problem is, the value doesn't exist, okay? For example, who remembers, it was a while ago now, but when Kendall Jenner, or Pepsi placed Kendall Jenner in this commercial around Black Lives Matter. Does anyone remember that? Okay, all right, yeah, good, all right. I felt a little bit alone there for a minute. But for those of you who might not know what I'm talking about, it was a little bit, a while back now. But yeah, Pepsi thought it was a good idea to kind of jump on this Black Lives Matter movement. They could see that it was trending online, everyone was talking about it, and so they wanted a piece of that pie. So they grabbed Kendall Jenner, they pop her in this commercial, in this middle of the protest, she's holding a Pepsi can, she passed it over to the police, and then peace everywhere, okay? She has just solved Black Lives Matter. Okay, it was really stupid, okay? And people were up in arms for good reason. Because can anyone tell me what Pepsi and Black Lives Matter have to do with one another? Oh, when did they start caring about it? Okay, they didn't. Okay, they just saw a trend and they tried to jump on it. Another question, can anyone tell me what Burger King has to do with the Pride movement? Oh, I know, right? It's laughable. It's just like, what they've done is they've, put a rainbow pattern on a Whopper and they've called it a day, okay? But this is a problem. And, when the signal value, the value is no further than the wrapper, okay, and it's not embedded in the company, people take notice, okay? And it actually has the opposite effect, okay? So real impact happens when values actually align and the offering makes behavior change easier. So I guess, to wrap up, because I feel like I've been talking for a long time, does marketing work? Hell yeah, we know it works, okay? We are practitioners, we know the hard skills, we've got the technical skills, and we are really effective at driving behavior, okay? And, trying to bring these two things closer together doesn't actually mean that if you're working commercial, you have to go back to the office tomorrow and go, right guys, we gotta, make these huge organizational changes. Actually, no, it actually starts with small incremental changes that we can make as human beings, okay, and practitioners working in marketing. For example, we just need to ask ourselves some really simple questions. For example, as a company and as a brand, what cultural norms are we shaping? Okay, what are we responsible for? What are we putting out there that people are responding to? Okay, another good question is, what choices are we facilitating? Yes, we are also, making it easy for people to buy from our brand, and we're facilitating those choices. But, underlining choices, what are we also, designing and facilitating? A good one, where are we driving attention to our brand? Yes, but where else could we be driving attention as well? What values are we internalizing? What values do we have on the wall as an organization, part of our mission statement, but don't actually translate into the organization, the culture, and ourselves as human beings as well. Okay, how can we get these things more in alignment? And also, because we are so good at storytelling, marketers by trade, what narratives are we as a brand amplifying? Okay, so that's kind of it from me, guys. But because, I'm a lecturer, I'm an academic at heart, and I do love to give a bit of homework. I've just got a few things up here, that if you're interested about, how brands can meet their mission or how we can get things working together, these links here are a really good place to start. So that's it from me. Feel free to, I don't even know if that QR code will work on that screen, but feel free to find me on LinkedIn if you want to chat more about this stuff. I'm always open to, talking to people, especially when it comes to social marketing. All right, thank you.